The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to today's webinar on how to run IT like a business. I'm your host, Sonika. The webinar is being presented by Sourabh Hajela. We will start today's webinar with a poll. Please take a moment to respond. This webinar will last for about an hour. The first 45 minutes will be the presentation, and the last 15 minutes or so will be dedicated to your questions. During the webinar, you may communicate with me or submit your questions through the chat button on your control panel. If you drop your connection, please dial back in. In the unlikely event that our connection is dropped, please wait 5 minutes and then dial back in. Make sure that your microphone is on mute at all times. It is my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Sourabh Hajela, the founder, CEO, and executive editor of CIO Index, an award-winning thought leader with over 28 years of experience in strategy, planning, and delivery of IT capability to maximize shareholder value. Sourabh has served as head of e-business at ING USFS and Prudential Financial. He has held leadership positions with top-tier consulting firms such as A.T. Kearney and Booz Allen and Hamilton. Sourabh's interest is in a business-focused quantitative approach and associated frameworks to create IT capability to maximize shareholder value with special emphasis on the measurement and monitoring of IT investment returns. He has authored white papers on IT strategy, e-strategy, IT investment management, IT governance, enterprise architecture planning, and many more. Without further ado, I present to you Mr. Sourabh Hajela. Hello, Sourabh. It's all yours.
Hi, Sonika. Good morning, everybody. My name is Sourabh Hajela, and I'm delighted to be with you all this morning discussing a really fascinating topic, running IT as a business, or an internal business to be more appropriate. The discussion this morning focuses on value. IT and CIOs in particular are being asked to deliver value. CIOs are being told that you are not IT leaders, you are business leaders. So the whole question of value, the whole question of making better decisions about IT is at the center of this new model which is being proposed, that is to run IT like a business. The way IT started was that we had IT running as a function. You would need a new laptop, you would need a new mainframe, you would need an email system, and you would go to your IT person and they would get that for you. Well, that's a great model, worked for decades and delivered value that could not be quantified, could not be articulated, could not be communicated. But as IT became more central to the business operations, as it became more central to business value, the questions started popping up around what value does IT deliver? The questions started popping up around, can I calculate it? And then by extension, the person heading up the IT function was now required to articulate that value, calculate it, and communicate it to the people who were giving him or her the money to run their operations. So this is roughly how we have evolved on this value question over the years. Recently, and this is at least a decade old now, a model was proposed to run IT as a business because people said, hey, business is can be related directly to value, so why not run IT like a business, and we would be creating value. And we would be talking about value, we would be thinking in terms of value. This is a fantastic way of looking at value, and we're going to look at this model. First, I want to define what it is, trying to understand what does it mean to run something like a business. Then I want to discuss with you why. I mean, what are the issues that we're trying to solve before we even try to get into the solution. Then I want to present to you a simple but I believe an extremely powerful way of looking at the value creation within the IT organization and communicating or articulating it, and the various ways in which we can actually create using this one framework to see how this thing works with different models, including the running IT like a business model as well. Before we dive into the framework itself, I want to give you a really good example. Now, this is really old at this point, but this is one of the better examples I've found of a purist way of running IT like a business. This case comes from USAA, which is an insurer to our personnel in our armed forces, in the United States Armed Forces. I know this audience is global. So for the U.S. Armed Forces, this is the provider of insurance, a very, very highly regarded organization. I have members who serve in the U.S. military and are veterans, and they swear by this organization, very happy with the services it provides. But during the 90s, as the story goes, the IT function was really not delivering value. It is said that IT costs were going up, not in direct proportion to the revenues of USAA. Remember, this is a for-profit organization. Now, there are different reasons why IT costs can go up and not in direct proportion to the revenues of the business or company. But let's for now assume that this was IT's contribution to the revenues was not increasing proportional to the cost increase in IT. They also had a couple of projects which were abject failures. Now, I'm not going to go into a tangent of why you should never have a $100 million IT project, because you show me a $100 million IT project and I'll show you a $1 billion mistake. But we're not going to go there because that's not the purpose of this webinar. We're just going to assume that people were in general dissatisfied with IT, costs rising, projects failing, value not being delivered to the business. So the solution proposed was to hire not a CIO, but a CEO for the IT function. So now instead of it being an IT function, it now becomes an IT organization, a business within a business. And instead of having a head of IT or chief information officer or head of a function, you now have the head of a business, whose name is Steve Yates. He took over and was given the mandate to create a company within a company. To run, as we'll see in a minute, Mr. Yates decides to convert the internal IT department into a business. He went ahead and hired himself a CFO. Now you'll see where this story is headed, who created a business model, as we all know, that the basis of any business is a business model. How will you create value? How will you exchange the value in the marketplace is all driven by a business model. They went ahead, they created a list of 200 products and services, each with a price tag. Now you're seeing that this is a purist's dream of an internal business. They converted their IT managers into brand managers, each managing a product line. Now, for those of you who are not from the marketing world, a brand manager is responsible for the profitability of a product or product line. What that means is that they live to create profits off of a product that R&D and production has created for them. So all of their thinking is geared towards thinking of how much money can I make aligning this product and its capability with a certain market or market segment. How do I keep refining it to continue that value stream coming in? So this person is not delivering products, they're actually in the business of delivering profitability. So it's a huge mindset change, and now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of what a real business is. Even though this happens to be an internal business, they actually went out and did that. This is the best part for me. They created not just this organization and a way of thinking about profitability and business and products and such. They actually had an income statement and a balance sheet. Now think about it. For a business, when they talk about income statements and profit and loss and balance sheets, you take that as a given. But for an internal business, this to me is the purest form of running IT like a business that I've seen. I'm sure there must be more examples. Now, they started marketing their company internally. Their decisions, which is where we started off saying, okay, we're not just talking of value. Value is driven by the decisions that lead up to that value. The decisions that a typical IT organization makes is what is being asked of me. The decision that a business takes is whether I will make the money doing the things that is being asked of me. You can see the basic difference between the two mindsets. And here's the best part. As IT started generating profits, the IT department, Mr. Yates, decided on keeping those profits, not passing them on to the customers as rebates or anything, like reduced pricing or anything that said, no, we're not a real business. We're just playing business for a year. And at the end of the year, I'm just going to give you back whatever I gained. As you can see, that this is, at least in my opinion, one of the purest forms of running IT like a business. You have a balance sheet, you're running it for profitability, you have product managers, you have a chief financial officer. This is an excellent example, and let's see, did they produce results? Well, here's the chart. Without going into the details of what it's depicting, the net message is, as you can see, that line just touching the sky, that they started generating a tremendous amount of business value while they were reducing the amount of money consumed by IT. This is the dream of a business. This is the dream of a CEO who has an IT department where IT costs are going down and their contribution to business value is increasing. So this case obviously depicts that this experiment, this running IT like a pure business, internal company within a company, actually worked. That brings us to the question, why did it work? Was it because, just running something like a business internal to another business will result in value? Was it because now they could clearly calculate the value that they were creating, and hence the chart that I showed you a second ago was possible? Was it because that now they knew what value they were creating and now they could articulate it, now they could communicate it? That's the reason why that chart that I showed you became possible. So what was it? And we're going to talk a little bit about this. I think that it's a combination of all three, and at least that's the promise of running IT like a business. That you are able to create value, you're able to calculate the value that you've created, and you're able to communicate the value that you have created. This is the dream world. This is the holy grail of IT and the whole purpose of IT within an organization. That brings us to the second question. Well, should you as a company emulate this model? Should everybody emulate this model? Well, that's something that I'm going to try and answer in the rest of the presentation. Can IT really run like a business? I have my doubts. I'm going to, just go over why is it that I believe that can't be done. Can an internal organization have a brand identity? Can it have brand managers? Can it have a business model? Very, very difficult, and I'm going to try and discuss with you why is it that I believe that it's very difficult. You can approach it, but you can never reach it. And then the whole question of profitability. Now, as you all know, the pricing and profitability is not just a measure of cost plus, that I spent X number of dollars producing this product, so I'm going to charge X plus Y percentage. Pricing can literally be, if you follow the Starbucks model, you can buy a $4 cup of coffee that costs them maybe 10-20 cents to make. Pricing is a beautiful mechanism that aligns the market's need with your product, and hence it just does not depend upon the cost factor alone. It depends upon how you've branded the business. It determines how much profit you can generate from that business. So we're going to look at all of these things, try and answer all these key questions. Now, before I go any deeper into the answers to these questions, Sonika, would you mind sharing with us the results of the poll that we conducted at the beginning of this presentation?
Absolutely, sir. So we had about 87% of the people who responded, 83% of those said that they do believe that IT should be run like a business, and 17% believe that it maybe should be run like a business. So for the most part, they do almost all believe that IT should be run like a business.
Well, this is great. It's great because I believe in the same thing. I believe that IT should be run like a business. I am going to talk about the limitations, but I believe in the fundamental model that the decision making is improved, the value generation, value communication is improved if you follow the running IT like a business model. So, I'm happy that at least 80% plus think the way I do. So, folks, the biggest investment that a company can make is in IT. Typically 50% plus of the cost of any organization is actually going into IT. And the problem that we're facing, I'm going into what problem are we trying to solve with this running IT like a business model. So there are two problems that we're trying to solve. One is that there's a huge amount of money going in to one function, and it's disproportionate. If you think about 50% plus, I mean, I've seen, 56, 58% of a company's budget actually going into the IT department or function or organization. And then you're not able to articulate what value that function provided you. I mean, I know that if IT were to disappear tomorrow, you wouldn't be able to send email. But beyond that, most people cannot articulate, hey, this is exactly the amount of value that we created for you. This is exactly the amount of value that we generated and delivered for you. Hence, we are valuable. And that has been the biggest problem CIOs have faced, and that's why this role is in a flux and people keep on questioning it. It's unfair because marketing does not face the same questions. Your CFO doesn't face the same questions, but unfortunately, this is where we are. So we're not going to be able to walk away from it, and hence the model of running IT like a business is going to work for us. The second big problem is how are IT decisions made? And the big pejorative way of describing it is IT for IT's sake, that we're just creating projects, we're just doing things because, that's what, it's the coolest technology, it's the coolest thing happening outside, and hence just IT decides to do it without regard for what is it that the business really wants. Part of this is true. I've seen those kinds of projects, and part of this is not true because I've seen projects that are phenomenal that fail to articulate the value, and hence they get that bad rap. So bottom line, we're not maximizing the bang for our IT buck. Let's look at what is the place of the IT organization. So this is an overly simplistic framework that I presented. Each one of these elements that I'm presenting here, we could go into detail, and each one of these elements actually can map out into volumes, if not hundreds of pages. But the basic model, before we discuss what is the right model, is the following. You have an IT organization which has a certain capability driven by, and this is, we've covered it in other webinars, IT capability is driven by 4 elements. You have your IT strategy, you have your IT processes, organization, and infrastructure. Together they create IT capability. That IT capability can then, and I'm taking the running IT like a business model here and saying that IT capability results in you producing products and services. That then has, and I should have taken out this IT portion of it, that has customers. So those customers buy your products. Now you also have a supply chain, and that supply chain is IT suppliers who provide you with hardware, software, network, all sorts of services. This, in a nutshell, is the world of IT. Buying stuff, molding them, managing them. You can work as a general manager, converting them into products that then are consumed by the customer. Well, this is a great model. It doesn't talk about how decisions are made that result in value creation. This is a great model, but it doesn't talk about how are those decisions connected to business value. And that is where the different ways of thinking about whether products or services or initiatives. So I'm going to take two very prominent ways of thinking about IT value and the decisions and their connection to the business. There are two distinct ways of looking at it. One is when we graduated from IT being a function to IT being an enabler and a driver now with the internet and all the talk about digital disruption. But let's stick to IT value and IT decisions and IT's connection with the business. People started saying, hey, I'm talking about our IT ROI. I'm talking about IT, we're making an investment in IT. So IT as an investment model is what we're in right now, where we're saying, okay, tell me if I were to invest XYZ in this project, how much money did you get from me? IT investments are what are supporting business projects. So one of the things that I personally have been advocating is not thinking about IT initiatives. I'm advocating thinking in terms of there are only business initiatives where IT plays a role. There's a whole spectrum of other functions that come to serve that business purpose, hence the business initiative, and the investment is in that business initiative. But for now, let's just say, okay, the business wants to enter a new market, they want a new system for that, they have put in some money, it's an IT project. These initiatives deliver value by doing what the business is expecting them to do. Hence the whole issue of alignment. Then these initiatives consume a certain amount of dollars, hence the cost. The value is in what they generated for the business, which then went out and took into its own marketplace and created value from its customers. So you see, it's an indirect link to value because the value coming in is the profitability of the corporation, and that profitability has a component where IT played a role in it. How much? This model, unfortunately, does not tell us or gives us misleading, because how do you quantify what value the defense brought to an overall sports team? It's a very, very tough thing to do because the value is in how did the team win and by how many goals. I'm just giving you a sports analogy. I know people don't like it, but it's a simple analogy to take to say, look, what role did the defense play? And what is the value? And now you are in a semantic, you're in an academic discussion that doesn't tell you exactly, and if it tells you, it's generally misleading. On the other side of the spectrum is running IT as a business. Now you're looking at a balance sheet. Now you're looking at an income statement. Now you're in the realm of products and services that you sell for a profit. There is no doubt in anybody's mind as to the value that this entity within the business generated. And hence you can see between the right where you're still talking investment and you're still talking ROI and you're still talking business case, you're still talking every element of value that you can, you're still not able to articulate it. But on the left-hand side, it's as simple as showing somebody your income statement or your balance sheet. So these are the two paradigms. I'm going to go into details of the framework that we gave, and we're going to try and make the connection between these two. So first, let's look at running IT as a business. On the right-hand side is IT capability. In another webinar, we spoke about how alignment is a necessary but not a sufficient condition to delivery of value. But let's just, for now, gloss over that and say, look, the whole idea is to use IT capability, create products and services that your market wants. So your business customer, because it's a captive audience, you are an internal provider, you're an internal business, so your only customers are your other functions of the business. Alignment of this model is about producing products and services that the market wants. If you produce something that the market does not want, by definition, you're not going to be profitable. By definition, you should not be producing that product or service. This is, one aspect of alignment. The second aspect of alignment is what is the market willing to pay for it? Because you could be producing a fantastic product, charging too much for it. Market doesn't want it at that price. So the whole pricing angle that comes up with what people call in marketing terminology, product offering. and there's a whole bunch that goes into that. Unfortunately we won't have the time to go through all of that, but you get the picture that the whole issue of business IT alignment is in what products and services you produce that your market then wants to pay for, so that you can then generate the profitability for your business. The value in this model is in the pricing of the products and services, because we know that price times the number of units sold is actually what your profitability was. Now, I'm going to go through a few factors that this model doesn't take into, it's weak on. So think about economies of scale. When you create a product, you have spent a lot of money in R&D, you've spent a lot of money perfecting your production, and now you have a product that is costing you 10 cents to produce because now you've learned all of these things. If you were to market it to 10 people, the cost could be $1. But if you market it to 1 million people, the cost of your underlying infrastructure is split across those million, and the cost could come down to 10 cents or 1 cent. So by definition, some products gain a tremendous amount of value from economies of scale. Now let's take an IT example to see how your IT as a business won't work as an internal business. Let's just say you have SAP, you implemented SAP in one of the divisions, and now you have 25 divisions in your organization. You could actually use that base and provide services to all 25. Or you could have 25 copies of it, but economies of scale start to play because you've spent money learning it, you spent money implementing it. You can now use the same servers, the same infrastructure, and your cost goes down with every single copy, theoretically at least. And we know in practice usually that's not the way it turns out, but I'm giving you theoretical right now because we are in an academic discussion right now. So you have 25 copies sold, price comes down, let's just say direct proportion 1/25. But now you're competing with SAP, who has sold thousands of copies. And now you will start to realize that economies of scale are not your friend if you're an internal business. Second thing, marketing is really non-existent. Where is your captive audience going to go for that SAP product? It's going to have to come to you. So if you really think about marketing as trying to identify demand and trying to find out who's in the market for that product, you're really not marketing anything internally if you think about, from a purist perspective. The cost in this case is the budget. This is the amount of money that went into creating this product, and the cost factors that a typical business takes into consideration are not going to come in. Your profitability, are you really going to charge SAP rates to your internal business? That's the question, because they're going to question, hey, I give you money. How is it that you're going to charge me, 10, 20 times what it cost you? You're going to have a lot of debates happening within the business. Can you honestly price the product to market? Can you benchmark externally what's happening, like we saw in USAA? That's the real question about profitability and running IT like a business. Now, I'm going to go into running IT as an internal capability, the internal initiatives, the way we're doing it. But before we do, Sonika, would you mind pushing the second poll, because we'll be able to discuss its results before we finish this presentation.
Sure.
So take about a minute to respond to it. Is that enough time, Sonika? Should we move on?
Just about 10 more seconds. We'll be done.
Okay.
All right, we are done. So.
Great, thank you. Now, We'll discuss the results of the poll in a second. Let's look at the second model that I've proposed, which is IT initiatives and IT alignment. This is the world we are in right now. Business IT alignment, business fusion. What does it mean? It's the same IT capability, if you think about it, and I'm using the word same, but it doesn't have to be. These two models can produce something different, but for now, let's just say it's the same capability. This capability was asked by the business to deliver on certain initiatives. They gave you the money to run those initiatives. You did your portfolio rationalization, and you decided these were the initiatives that makes the most sense for the business. And how did you decide that? You're essentially saying that I decided that based upon business need. The business said, give me this, and that's how I gave it. So if you look at those two mighty blue arrows, alignment means that your business capability arrow is completely aligned with your IT initiatives arrow, and then you live in this beautiful world of perfect business IT alignment. Your initiatives are giving the business what they want. The business takes what you've given them because these are business initiatives. They go to the marketplace and voila, value is delivered, and you know value has been given to the shareholders. Shareholder value has been created. Now, I've touched upon this before. Think about it. Do you in this model know what percentage of that value was delivered by IT? I don't think so. And that's where most of the struggle comes in, is in this discussion of, well, what exactly did IT do? We spend so much money, and that becomes, soon it becomes contentious because it's very difficult for you to say, this is the value that I delivered on that business initiative. This model places the value creation, though, the amount of value is encapsulated in the initiative. As I've said, it's nebulous, it can't be quantified, and that the cost is what went into, just like the other model, that the cost is in what the budget, the infrastructure costs, all of these things combined went into creating or delivering on that initiative. There are two, we've discussed this before, but I'm just going to touch upon this briefly. There's an explicit value that you generate, which is, you had to deliver a system for the business to get into a market. So you can say, hey, I delivered the system. But then delivering the system, there is an implied value created, which again is very difficult to quantify. The implied value is, what did you learn from doing it? What did you train? I mean, you trained a bunch of people who were not well versed in, let's just say, a certain technology, are now trained on it so they can deliver on the next project faster. This is what we've called residual value in any IT initiative. This is a contentious portion. This is one thing that CIOs do not very, they don't articulate the residual value because it's very difficult to quantify. I see why they can, but they should try to somehow articulate this value. These are the two values that are encapsulated in the initiative that you just delivered on. Alignment, as I've said, is in, did you deliver what the business wanted? And by definition, again, you can't prove it, by definition, if you delivered what the business wanted, then you created value. Can you prove it? Well, not so easily. We've seen these two models. I'm going to go and look, dive a little deeper into what does it mean to run IT as a business, and then we'll look at, the differences between the two models that we've been discussing so far. Sonika, if you don't mind, would you push the poll results from the second poll, please?
Absolutely, Sourabh, with pleasure. So the question that we asked in this poll was, running IT like a business will create business and IT alignment, help the business understand the value proposition of IT, optimize IT cost, or whether it'll do all or none of these. For the most part, 68% of those who responded believe that it will be all of the above. It will create business and IT alignment, it will help understand the value proposition of IT, and it will optimize IT cost. And we had an even split between those who chose one or the other of the three. Nobody believed that it would be none of the above.
This is great. I believe what the majority believes here, that there's a tremendous amount of value that can be generated in following this model. As I've been articulating along the way, that there are limitations. So you do not want to be a purist, and if you're not a purist, then you will see the value, you'll be satisfied with that value, and you'll be able to communicate that value as a CIO, because that's one of the biggest issues facing CIOs today is, how do I articulate the value that my organization is creating? Now, let's touch upon what exactly does it mean to run IT as a business? What does it entail? The CIO becomes CEO. You are going from a cost center to a profit center. You're no longer a person who is, and CIOs have been called pejoratively, order takers. I want an email, you give me an email, laptop encryption needs to be done, and so CIO runs along and encryption is produced. You are fundamentally moving away from that model to a model that says, I only do what my market demands. However, I only do what the market is willing to pay for. However, I only do things that are profitable for me to do. So if my market is demanding something of me, which is not profitable for my business, I don't do that. A fundamental shift from a cost center to a profit center is that the baseline expectation is that you are now making better decisions about IT costs and IT delivery, IT operations, because you're driven by profitability. What people fail to understand is that it has in it a very simple, powerful, and for a lot of chief marketing officers and such, it would be a problematic thing, which is that the CIO, as IT function CEO, can say no to certain things that are not profitable for them, but the chief marketing officer or the CFO or everybody else thinks it's an extremely nice thing to have, and that's where this model starts to break in most cases, because you can't, as an internal organization, run for profitability all the time. The second major difference is you're no longer thinking about relationship managers. A lot of organizations have, in order to get better business IT alignment, provided relationship managers who are connecting with different business functions to find out what is it that they need. And then that demand is translated or connected with the supply, and you deliver services. It's a really good way of aligning. Business IT alignment is the driver there. It's a really good way of looking at things, but that model also breaks down when you start to think of people who are doing that function not as relationship managers, but as product managers. Again, profit motivation drives their decisions, not relationships or keeping people happy. A product manager keeps their customer happy by producing products that the customer wants, but driven by the profitability of the product for themselves. So keep in mind, these are two fundamentally different ways of looking at the same thing. You no longer have employees who show up to work and do what they're asked to do. You now have service providers, a different mindset. It's a customer-focused mindset. It's a mindset that says, I exist because there's a market for my products. I exist because there's a customer. I shall, from this point on, do everything to please the customer. Very, very different thing from being an employee who's not affected by whatever it is that happens in the marketplace. Now you're thinking about a back office. You're no longer thinking about chargebacks and this, that, and the other. You're thinking about income statements. You're thinking about profitability. You're thinking about balance sheets. Very, very different way of looking at things. Now let's talk about the IT supplier thing that we were referring to earlier on in our framework. This person I'm calling it a person. This entity fundamentally affects your profitability. This person is going to market with you. They are no longer providing goods and services and running. These people are in your strategy. These people are in your strategic decision making. These people are no longer your vendors, they're your partners. And for those of you who have done anything in supply chain and anything in procurement, understand the difference between a vendor and a partner, because now we're talking about vendor relationship management, just like on the business side we were talking about customer relationship management. You are now going to have to develop a whole strategy for getting these partners in your processes, breaking down your boundaries to get these people and their processes within your processes, a completely different way of looking at things rather than I need this, deliver it, run along. Third thing, you now are talking not in terms of initiatives, you're talking in terms of products. You are a product by definition is something that encapsulates value. You're now talking about product offering, you're talking about product demand, you're talking about product pricing, you're talking about product profitability, you're talking about products that you're competent in building. So your core competencies come to the fore. You will not get into a product. If you're running a business, you will not get into a product no matter how profitable it is unless you can deliver on it and create a sustainable advantage. You're looking for white spaces in the marketplace. You're looking for things that are fundamentally different from just doing something that somebody else has asked for and is paying for it. So the whole concept of a product catalog is very different from you saying, these are the initiatives that I'm working on. The fourth difference, pricing. You are, in the least, producing a rate sheet that you're going to give to your quote-unquote customers. This is what I am in the business of, and this is what it's going to cost you. Well, this pricing, for the most part, people assume it's about, oh, this costs us this much, so I'll just put a certain profit margin. And like I said before, pricing is an art that says that I know that my market is going to sustain this. I gave you the Starbucks example. Coffee does not have to cost $4 or $5 a cup, but you enter into a Starbucks extremely profitable that is charging you that. A Mercedes is not producing anything which is costing proportionally more than what a Hyundai is. Well, again, I'm taking liberties with words here, but you understand the point I'm trying to make, that Mercedes has built up a brand, Rolls-Royce has built up a brand that they can charge $250,000 for a car that normally would cost you $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 in the marketplace, does the same things, but Rolls-Royce can charge you $250,000 and go up to $2 million if you have the money. So pricing is an art. Pricing is determined by market conditions. Pricing is determined by competitive landscape. Pricing is determined by the brand. It's not something that you can practice freely within an internal organization because of obvious reasons. What's the point at which you'll be called out for selling a Rolls-Royce? I mean, that is simply not going to work. So, and then we're not going to go into, don't have enough time, product bundling. Product offering entails not just the features of a product, but also how your customer can actually procure it. So financing is a part of the deal. If you think about how you procure most heavy, expensive items is through a financing bundle also, which obviously internal IT organizations can really not do. So running IT as a business requires a fundamental mindset, which is different than running IT as a function. I've gone through these. I'm not going to repeat them here. The advantages are the clear articulation of value, the clear decision making, the clear value-driven mindset that delivers value, articulates it, and you are in a perfect world absolutely where you should be. The reality of the situation is where the cons come in, that you can't really create a brand with one captive customer, which is your internal functions. You can't really scale. You can't really do competitive pricing. You can't really have your employees all engaged in a manner that you want to engage in, because imagine an IT organization giving bonuses based upon certain profitability, and the rest of the organization responding to that, saying, hey, you have us captive, and now you're making all of this money, and now you're giving yourself bonuses. Honestly, you'll have a rebellion on your hands. So if we look at the cons, that's where the model starts to break, because when you start to operate as a business, that's when people who are so happy and gung-ho asking you to run it like a business, they realize what it means when you start to run it as a business, and they start to run in the other direction. There is a continuum, and I know I'm already late, so I'm going to take another few minutes to run through the rest of the slides. There's a continuum of IT's organization. You start on the left-hand side as a cost center. You are essentially delivering functions, you're delivering functionality, and you're getting money for it. Simple, straightforward. This is the way IT has come about. Then you go into chargebacks. You say, okay, I did this for this person, and then you get into this ball of wax where you're now trying to say the same SAP system that is serving 4 functions, who gives what for what. There's a whole discipline around chargebacks, but you understand that's really not quantifying value, articulating it, and placing it in the right place, and your decision making is going to be slightly different, but not quite where it needs to be in order to say that I'm driven by value. The third thing is IT as an internal business, which is what we've been discussing in this presentation. Here you are in the product profitability pricing model, extremely good in terms of value creation, in terms of value articulation, in terms of value communication. However, I've already gone through the limitations. And now the fourth realm, which I've seen happen in organizations, this is where I think is the holy grail is, where you're not only an internal business, but now you're a real business trying to sell services and products in the marketplace. Now your pricing pressures ease because you can actually price to market. Your product decisions start to ease because you can actually say no to products that you don't want to manufacture because you're in the marketplace outside. A lot of the stuff that is not possible in IT as an internal business is possible in IT as an external business, but then again, it places limitations where there are certain products that you must only create for your internal organization because they give you a strategic advantage. They give you a leg up on your competition. Imagine if you're now selling it to your competitors, and that can be a huge problem. But it's a huge problem in the framework, in the paradigm that we're in. It doesn't have to be. There are ways around it. So if you can achieve the rightmost, IT as a business, that's where you want to operate. I've gone through this before. The whole point here is that you are, when you're running IT internally as a business, then you are restricted, you're constrained by the dimensions that are being placed upon you, by the demands, by the drivers that are being placed upon you by the external business that you're serving. So your so-called customers are actually going to be placing restrictions on your operations. You have to take those into consideration if you are running IT as a business. Well, here's the net of what this whole presentation has been trying to say for those of you who've caught on. Running IT as internal initiatives and running IT as a business are roughly the same thing, because your initiatives are actually what your products and services can be depending upon how you frame and model them. The cost is the cost, that's your IT budget. The risk is both, it's meaningful for IT as a business only in terms of producing products that are not selling in the marketplace, producing products that are, the cost is to more than what the market can bear. Those same risk factors go into IT as an investment. You can make corrections because we know the root causes of you've done portfolio rationalization. You can actually go into the root causes of all of the initiatives that are going wrong and how to get out of them. And business value, because of the constraint placed by IT as an internal business, you can really not realize the value that you would as with IT as an external business. You're roughly creating the same amount of business value. So with minor differences and semantic differences, these are essentially doing the same things, but IT as a business can articulate value much better than IT as an initiative. And this is where I make the connection with IT capability, producing IT initiatives that each initiative can map up to an IT product or service, or multiple initiatives can map up to an IT product or service that the business customer is purchasing from you, and you can then see that the whole business IT alignment then becomes through the IT products and services that you're creating, not directly between the business demand and IT supply. And folks, that's it. I've run through giving you a flavor for what it is that it means to run IT like a business, what are the critical elements, and what problem it is that you're trying to solve. I'm planning on doing some in-depth step-by-step as to how to convert your organization to run like a business. We'll keep you posted. Sonika, I'm sorry I've run over time, but it is yours, and we can take some questions if you'd like.
Sure, Saurabh. So there was a question asked that, there's been a lot of discussion on whether IT can or cannot be a profit center. You did touch upon that briefly during your presentation, but would you just give us, a short rundown of what your view is on this topic?
Yeah, I believe that IT cannot be run as a profit center. I think the basic restrictions placed on pricing and basic restrictions placed on product development, you have to develop certain products that are not profitable. Because those are going to create capability for the business. So I don't believe IT can be run for profit. I do believe that IT can be run where you can demonstrate value creation. And these two, in my view, the latter is an invaluable way of approaching IT. So IT as a business must be pursued.
Well, one of our attendees said that, IT can be run as a value center. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think value, not hard dollars, is the way to go. So running IT as a value center, I absolutely agree with. I believe in that concept.
So one of our attendees today said that they're not sure if IT as a business can really work. You did give an example during your presentation, but can it really be proven through a higher ROI?
Yes, I believe so. I think the basic framework is pretty solid. The example that we've shown demonstrates that it can be done. And if we were to use the value center more than the profit center model, then I think it's relatively easy to articulate, and this is what we do in IT value mapping, is we show you how and where IT has created value, how much. So that, yes, I believe that it can be done, and that's the way to do it.
So what are
it can be proven. I'm sorry.
So what are the essential things for IT to work as a business?
I think that the two things that are critical, the first one is a fundamental change in mindset. And the mindset, profitability versus a mindset of projects and functions, it's two different ways of looking at the same thing. You need to change the mindset. You need to change roles, obviously, roles and responsibilities. And you need to then stick to your guns. And this is where the CIO must stick to their guns and say, this is the way we approach this because there is value to be delivered. And we are articulating the value delivered, and hence this model makes sense, and this is how we're going to approach it. So when people talk about relationship managers versus product managers, you have to stand up and say the product manager way of approaching IT is better, and we'll prove it to you, and this is how it's going to work. So you're going to have to accept certain things that the product manager says will not be delivered, and now tell us why that needs to get done. So it's the discussion then goes back to the business to prove that the product that they're asking to be produced is actually going to be beneficial to the shareholder. And that discussion has not happened in IT organizations, and that discussion needs to happen in IT organizations. So change the mindset, change the organizational roles and responsibilities of what I'm saying, and then obviously there are artifacts and there are deliverables that change with it. You'll have to have product catalog, you'll have to have brand managers, you'll have to have pricing, you'll have to have income statements and balance sheets. Again, blue dollars, which is internal dollars, you can actually prove the value delivered and the profitability of your organization.
Saurabh, during the presentation, you had briefly referred to other functions. And if IT as a business is a good idea, then why don't these other functions like marketing and HR, etc., get the same pressure to work as a business as does IT?
That's a brilliant question. I think there's a lot of political forces at work which force the CIO, and CIO the biggest, I mean, if we're not cynical, then the biggest reason why the CIO is getting that much pressure is because of the amount of money. It's a huge budget item that is going into IT. But the reason why CMOs and CFOs and HR have managed to fight this thing successfully, I would say, is that they are business people. Their functions are deemed not just nice to haves, they are deemed indispensable to the business. And they have managed to hold their ground by being very articulate that most CIOs have not been. And the moment you start to accept that you cannot show the value being delivered is the moment your seat at the table is now tenuous, your grasp on that business leader title is tenuous. So I say that the CIO needs to get more adept at defending their position, which I don't believe a lot of CIOs are. And when you see a CIO who's adept at defending their position, this pressure eases. But I believe this is a nice model for any internal function, whether it's training or HR or marketing or finance. Every function must act and behave like a business, trading services and products with each other, and you'll soon realize that as a corporation, as a business, whether corporation or any other type of business, you'll start to see that the value being delivered by each function, the alignment between the value creation, the cumulative being more than the sum of parts, that's the only way to do it. So I'm a supporter, I'm a believer in all internal functions running as businesses.
So Saurabh, one of our attendees feels it seems like using the investment and amortization in quotes model might allow us to account for unprofitable projects as capitalized investments, which would defer costs over time, giving us more adequate value profit model. Your thoughts?
I would tend to agree with that from what I gather, the direction they are headed. That it'll essentially do the same function as products and services. So you could go into products and services because then it becomes easier, to talk in terms of alignment, to talk in terms of value delivery. It's a much easier model to articulate and communicate value. But like I said before, that the base is one that says that you are using initiatives to create products and services. So you could stop at the initiatives, but then now you're left with a question of value delivery, you're left with a question of articulating value, and you're left with a question of alignment. And you can get over all of these things by going to the product model. Just one more step, and I believe that step is valuable enough to want to do.
Thanks, Saurabh. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for more questions. So for those of you whose questions we couldn't get to, we will be sending you some responses via email. And so I thank you, Saurabh, for an interesting presentation. And I thank all of you for joining us today. We hope that you enjoyed the webinar. Your feedback is appreciated as we continually strive to improve upon what we deliver to our members. For upcoming webinars, please visit our events page on cioindex.com. A recording of this webinar will also be available shortly on the events page on our website. You may exit the webinar by simply clicking on the X on your control panel or choosing File, then Exit. Thank you once again for joining us today, and have a great day.